Here this weekend, chatting through the hot political stories. We've all new Peston on Sunday, live from 10 a.m. Time now for the news.
Corbyn defies the doom merchants in UK-wide elections. Just. Limited Labour losses still prompt questions about his leadership, but he remains cautiously defiant.
We hung on and we grew support in a lot of places.
In Scotland, the SNP falls short of an overall majority and Labour are pushed into a humiliating third place by the Conservatives. In Wales, Labour retain power but lose a heartland seat. UKIP are the new kids on the block.
And I'm in central London, where the results of the London mayoral contest could give Jeremy Corbyn a late boost.
Also this lunchtime, police search for a suspected gunman on the run in Somerset after a double shooting. And the Canadian wildfires keep burning. Thousands more are evacuated.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Alastair Stewart.
Good afternoon. Savaged by the Conservatives in a vitriolic campaign and sniped at by his own side, the Labour leader said, "We hung on." It was, however, the worst performance by a new party leader in living memory. Across England, Labour lost one council, and councillors counted in double figures, but not in the hundreds. It could have been much worse. In Scotland, it was. The party that once reigned supreme was humbled into third place behind the SNP and the Conservatives. With more results to come, including the mayoralty of London, this is the picture. In England, Labour have won the majority of councils declared so far, but overall, their number of seats has fallen, albeit slightly. In Wales, Labour remain the largest party, but the big gains there were for UKIP, who have won their first 7 seats, and Plaid Cymru, whose leader Leanne Wood took Rhondda from Labour in their heartland. But the big story is Scotland. Nicola Sturgeon's Scottish nationalists are 2 seats short of an overall majority, and the Conservatives have pushed Labour into third place. We have correspondents in Scotland and Wales and central London. First, political correspondent Lewis Vaughan-Jones with the story so far.
There are those who think Labour and its leader are heading in the wrong direction. But Jeremy Corbyn this morning defended his party's performance.
We hung on and we grew support in a lot of places.
Although even he admitted things weren't easy in Scotland.
There is a lot of building to do in Scotland. We are going to be with you. We're going to walk hand in hand with the party in Scotland to build that support once again.
Scottish National Party, 15,200.
Here it's the SNP doing what Labour used to do so often, win. Although Nicola Sturgeon's party was just short of an overall majority.
The SNP has won a third consecutive Scottish Parliament election. That has never been done before in the history of the Scottish Parliament. We have tonight made history.
So, Kes Dugdale has failed to win the Edinburgh Eastern constituency.
Labour has been reduced to finishing third in Scotland, the first time that's happened for over a century.
There's no doubt that our defeat for the Labour Party tonight is painful, but it is not the end of our campaign.
Davidson Ruth, Scottish Conservative.
For the Conservatives, the smile says it all. They're now the opposition to the SNP, a remarkable turnaround.
There are people right across Scotland who are sending the SNP a message. Their voices and the decision that we made as a country won't be ignored.
Things were more positive for Labour in Wales. No overall majority, but it's still the largest party with 29 seats. Plaid Cymru leader Leanne Wood did manage to win in the Labour stronghold of Rhondda, but it was UKIP making the biggest gains. Neil Hamilton, remember him? The former Conservative MP will now sit as one of 7 UKIP Assembly members.
I hadn't anticipated at the age of 67 that I would once again be elected to public office, particularly after I had been liberated from it so spectacularly in 1997 by the electorate.
In England, not all the council election results are in yet. The Conservatives will be reasonably pleased. They've gained a few seats, including in Peterborough, where the Prime Minister headed this morning. But even he was reflecting on events in Scotland.
Thank you very much. Someone had come to my office and said, Prime Minister, pretty soon the Conservatives are going to be the second biggest party in Scotland. I would have told them to go away, lie down, stop taking whatever they were taking and come back and tell me what they really thought. But that is what has happened.
Labour did hold on to some areas like Southampton, but so far they've lost a number of seats when opposition parties usually expect to be winning more at this stage. So these were not exactly a good set of results for Labour, but they weren't a disaster, and it doesn't seem they were bad enough to kickstart a leadership battle. Lewis Vaughan-Jones, ITV News, Westminster.
Well, we'll address that in just a moment, but first, more reaction now to today's results. Our Scotland correspondent Peter Smith is in Holyrood in Edinburgh this lunchtime. Peter, the results where you are have well and truly shaken up the political landscape of Scotland.
That's right, Alastair. We normally talk about the winners after these elections, but it was seen as a foregone conclusion that the SNP here would win. So the big story is the slow and painful demise of Scottish Labour. Jeremy Corbyn might be saying that he wants to walk hand in hand with people in Scotland in traditional Labour areas to rebuild the party, but if he comes up here, he'll probably find that those areas no longer exist. Last night, Labour in Scotland recorded their worst share of the vote up here in over 100 years, and worse, they suffered the humiliation of falling into third place behind the Tories. This is the toxic Tories of Margaret Thatcher and the poll tax, the hated Tories that were wiped out in the 90s. Labour are now seen as less credible than them as an opposition. There is, of course, the question of why. Well, many people say that Labour were incoherent on messages like Trident, but this is a serious blow for the UK Labour Party. The implications are that Jeremy Corbyn will be looking at constituencies in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, and he was seeing the makeup of those constituencies and saying that he needs to win back seats in Scotland if he is ever to have an overall majority at Westminster. Dark times for the Labour Party indeed.
Yeah, we just heard in Lewis Vaughan-Jones' package the Prime Minister himself saying if someone had come up to him and said the Tories are going to be second in Scotland, he'd told them to go away, lie down and take a pill or something. How much is it down to the new leader of the Tories in Scotland?
Absolutely, Alastair. This is key because in the party literature in this campaign, it didn't say vote for the Scottish Conservatives, it was saying vote for Ruth Davidson. She is seen as this strong opposition who can stand toe-to-toe with Nicola Sturgeon. Scotland was divided after the independence referendum into people who want Scotland to be independent, people who want Scotland to stay in the UK. She was seen as being the strongest argument for unionism and the person who can best and most effectively stand up to Nicola Sturgeon. So this maybe wasn't an endorsement for the Conservatives. David Cameron didn't come up, for example, in the campaign, but it certainly is an endorsement for Ruth Davidson as a strong opponent. One thing that's worth pointing out, though, is that obviously the SNP fell 2 seats short of the majority, but it tells you where we are in Scottish politics, that is seen as a bad thing in a parliament that's designed not to have an overall majority, while they also increased their share of the vote.
Peter, thank you for that. Well, our Wales correspondent Rupert Evelyn's been sweeping up reaction in Cardiff. So there, Labour remain in control, but they've lost a heartland seat, Rhondda, to the Nationalists. Is that a sign of things to come, do you think?
Well, I'm not entirely sure that it is. You know, after the general election, the Welsh Nationalist Plaid Cymru said, you wait till the Welsh Assembly elections. That is where we are really focusing our resources. And the reality is they describe it, Plaid Cymru, as a new dawn today, having taken the seat of Rhondda, their leader Leanne Wood, being successful there. But actually, if you look beyond that, Plaid really haven't had an awfully good night. They would have expected to have done far better, given the publicity and the exposure that their party has had over the last 12 months or so. So it's not surprising then that Labour's Welsh First Minister, Carwyn Jones, today was feeling pretty pleased with himself. Their party has only lost 1 seat. I think many of them thought they might have done a lot worse. Yes, they've lost one of their key players, but I think that's a hit they're willing to take.
Clearly a disappointment to lose Leighton in the Rhondda, a loss to our party and also to our country, but you know, people were telling us we'd lose more seats. We didn't. We held off the Tories in every seat where they challenged us.
Well, of course, the way the Welsh system works, the Welsh Assembly system works, is proportional representation, and that is played well and truly into the hands of UKIP. They now have 7 seats in the Assembly. That's more than 10% of the total makeup. Whether that will really give them a strong voice within the Assembly is unlikely, but it will certainly be a different voice. What many people will be looking at now is how Labour, who only have 29 out of the 60 seats, who they'll tie up with when they really need to get those important votes through.
Rupert, thank you. Well, the Labour leader still has the results of the London mayoral election to come, and Sadiq Khan being chosen as the man to take over from Boris Johnson would certainly give Mr Corbyn a big boost. This is the progress of the first choice votes counted so far, and at the moment Mr Khan is ahead with around 44% of the votes. The Conservative candidate Zac Goldsmith is on around about 35%. Well, our political correspondent Romilly Weeks is there live at City Hall, where the declaration will be made a little later on. It's a huge job, a huge mandate, but how important is the result for Labour, Romilly?
Oh, it's crucial. It would be a major upset if Sadiq Khan didn't win here. He has been comfortably, consistently ahead in the polls throughout this campaign. And as the votes are counted today from the live results tracker, I don't think he'll be sweating it too much. It does look like he's on course to bring the Tories' two-term reign over City Hall to an end. I'm not sure how much credit Mr Corbyn can claim for that, though. He wasn't a major presence in this campaign. In fact, at times it looks as though Mr Khan was at pains to distance himself from the Labour leader, especially during the anti-Semitism row. We're expecting results here not before 5 o'clock tonight. It could be much later than that, although there is a chance that if it is tight, the Goldsmith campaign could challenge the result because a major error in Barnet left many people unable to vote there. But at the moment, it's not looking like it will be very tight.
Romilly, thanks for that. And you can monitor the mayoral results as they come in, and also the results from Northern Ireland, which are just beginning to come in. It's all on our website, itv.com/news, including the story of the councillor who thought he'd lost only for a surprise turnaround. It's what elections are made of. itv.com/news. Well, I'm delighted now to be joined by the Labour MP Jo Cox, who won the Batley and Spen seat in last year's general election. Jo Cox, good of you to join us on a busy, busy day. Is Mr Corbyn now safe from a challenge?
Yeah, I think he definitely is. But, you know, as we look nationally, this was not a good day for the Labour Party. We were hammered in Scotland, as your report just said. We faced serious losses across, England, and we didn't do as well as we should have done really in Wales. At this stage of the electoral cycle, we should be winning far more seats to be on track to win the next general election.
So if he stays as leader, then what else has to change? Because we heard him this morning in Sheffield saying, fight the cuts, defend the steel industry, challenge inequality. I mean, that's Labour mantras. Nothing wrong with that.
It is, but through a number of reasons, lots of distractions and talking about things that voters didn't want us to be talking about has meant that the message to me very firmly from the doorsteps that I've been on over the last few months has been Labour wasn't talking about the right issues. We weren't connecting with people. We didn't persuade enough people yesterday to come out and trust us and vote for us. And those are the people that we're going to need to start talking to in the next few months and years if we're going to be on track to win the general election in 2020. So I think, Jeremy should take responsibility for a disappointing day yesterday and set out now a clear plan back to power in 2020, which these results don't put us on track to do.
What was he talking about that you didn't like, Jo Cox?
Well, look, we've been talking about, unilateral disarmament, we've been talking about the Falkland Islands, we've been talking about the monarchy. Now, these are important issues, but they're not the bread and butter issues that voters want us to be talking about, like health and education. Some of those things haven't been getting through to people, and we've got good ideas and good policies on them, but they haven't been heard.
Right.
Now, and it's up to Jeremy now to persuade the country that he's the Prime Minister in waiting.
Final thing that some of his friends would put to you, and I will do it on their behalf, impartial though I am, you are not an embittered old Blairite sniping from the wings, you're an embittered young Blairite sniping from the wings.
Look, I nominated Jeremy because I wanted our party and our members to have a proper debate. I thought they deserved that. But, we need now real leadership from Jeremy. I'm not interested in fighting any old battles. I'm a new MP. I just want to make sure we get a Labour government in 2020 to put right some of the stuff this government has done that's damaging lives across the country.
Jo Cox, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Well, I'm joined now by our deputy political editor, Chris Shipp, who is listening to that. Goodness gracious me, translate.
Translate, Jeremy Corbyn is safe.
Yeah.
We've been having conversations in this studio over the past few weeks about what would happen if they had a really, really bad election result. Well, they didn't have a good election result, but it wasn't as bad as some people had feared it would be. The conversations I've been having with Labour MPs, let's just call them those who aren't friends of Jeremy Corbyn this morning, have been, OK, well, he's got a bit more time. Maybe next year's election, we'll see how well he does then. But I think for these MPs, it was simply the worst set of results. That basically wasn't bad enough for them to launch a coup against his leadership, but it doesn't show that Labour's on course to win the 2020 election. And one of them said to me this morning, I love that total disaster has become a success. And perhaps this one sums it up. A Labour MP said, Corbyn is going nowhere, brackets, in every sense.
And finally and briefly, Joe Cox's point, very, very clear. Don't talk about the Falklands. Don't talk about unilateral nuclear disarmament. Talk about the bread and butter issues.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, I was up quite late last night listening to a Labour leader on Portsmouth Council who was saying that one of the reasons they think they lost some seats to UKIP was because Jeremy Corbyn was questioning whether or not we needed aircraft carriers. In a city like that, he said that went down very badly, and he put the hashtag on his tweets, Corbyn effect.
Going to talk to you again at the end of the programme with Colin Rullins. For the time being, Chris, thanks very much indeed. To other news now, and police are hunting a gunman who shot dead a man and injured another in a double shooting in Somerset. Police say 23-year-old Charlie Broadway is still potentially armed. Live now to Bob Cruz, who's in the village of Ilton this lunchtime. I know you've been there for some time now. What else have you been able to find out?
Well, another 5 police cars and a fire service aerial ladder have just arrived on the scene here this lunchtime. Police say that's to give them a better view over this site. There may be as many as 3 crime scenes here, and that will give them a better view over the site. The shooting happened just before 8 o'clock last night. One man was shot dead, a second man shot and injured. 2 people are in police custody already, a man and a woman, but they're still looking for a third. And it was just a matter of 2 hours after the shooting last night that they issued a picture and a description of the man they're looking for, 23-year-old local man Charlie Broadway, who police believe may still be armed and he may pose a risk to the public. They're saying they're using every resource available to them, armed police, the helicopter, but their main priority is to find and to arrest that man Charlie Broadway today.
Bob, thank you. Fresh weekend hospital death rates are skewed by fewer admissions, a new study suggests. Research from Manchester University says that patients admitted on Saturdays and Sundays tend to be more unwell. Government's used higher weekend death rates as a major reason for the need to change junior doctors' contracts. And the UN says an airstrike that killed 28 people at a Syrian refugee camp could amount to a war crime. An inquiry has been called into yesterday's attack, which came a day after the extension of a truce was confirmed. Syria's military has denied involvement. Thousands more people are being evacuated from parts of Canada as wildfires continue to spread. People sheltering in camps in the north of the country may have to move for a second time as those flames spread. Almost 50 fires are still burning across more than 300 miles. Paul Davis has the latest.
The fire chief has called it the worst week of his career. Today his men were able to enter the suburbs they were unable to save.
Crazy. Whole neighborhood just lost last night.
Seen from one of the emergency vehicles, what used to be a housing estate before the fire claimed it.
Still feel the heat off these houses and stuff. Just
Hundreds of vehicles were also consumed by the flames. Abandoned when the only roads out of Fort McMurray became jammed with thousands of people running for their lives. Today, many of those people are in evacuation centres outside the city. Safe, but they've been told it'll be a long time before they can go back and see what's happened to their homes.
What we're looking at right now still, our primary focus is the safety of the town, the safety of the residents of the town.
As this fire crew takes its first break in 30 hours, the wildfire isn't finished yet. Fanned by strong winds, it's now heading south of the city, towards 2 oil production sites. Paul Davis, ITV News.
Let's return now to our top story and those election results. Jeremy Corbyn insists Labour hung on despite losing councillors in England's local elections. But his party was pushed into third place in Scotland as the SNP secured an historic third win in the vote for the Scottish Parliament, but not an overall majority. In Wales, Labour remained the largest party, but it was UKIP who caught the eye, securing their first 7 seats in the Assembly. To digest it all, I'm delighted to be joined by our election analyst, Professor Colin Rallans, and back again, our deputy political editor, Chris Shipp. Colin, first, hung on says it all, doesn't it, bar Scotland?
Does, Alastair. We've been here on more dramatic occasions, I think it's fair to say. Yes, except Scotland. In Wales is quite interesting because Labour hung on in Wales because all the main nationwide parties actually lost ground to UKIP, and Labour therefore was able to keep their nose in front, and they've actually done much better than many people expected them to. 29 seats, they'll be able to effectively run the Assembly as a single-party operation again. In the English local council elections, the Conservatives, I think, were hoping that there'd be someone like Crawley or Redditch or Southampton or Plymouth, you name plenty of places.
Quite badly hurt in the south in terms of votes.
Yes, but not picking up the kind of seats they were expecting, hoping that Mr Cameron would be able to go round there today and have march around the local area with supporters in the usual way. And we've had none of that, of course. Yeah. The leaders and other people have been very quiet, and that shows you how sort of steady as she goes this result has been.
And Joe Cox saying that the dogs are off, Mr Corbyn, as it were, but they want a change. What is likely to be happening in that territory in terms of a leader who's scored the worst results in living memory?
You have to put this into context. Right. Normally, when a leader comes in, it's off the back of a new leader it's off the back of their party having been defeated at a general election, and therefore the party's lost a lot of seats beforehand. Corbyn's defending a very high watermark.
OK. What happens next?
It's all about Scotland, I think, at the moment. I mean, don't forget, when we talk about Scotland, let's just be clear here. The SNP did supremely well, but they don't have as many as they had before. Terrible for Labour. Good for the Conservatives, but let's remember who didn't go up north of the border. David Cameron didn't go up north of the border. This was very much, I think, Ruth Davidson's victory. Where we go next, I think Labour MPs go back. I think they sit on their hands, they sulk for another year and they wait to see what they can do maybe after the elections next time and see whether or not they think by then Jeremy Corbyn has got what it takes to win a general election.
All right, Chris and Colin, thank you both very much indeed. That's it. I'll be back at 6:30 with Charlene White. Until then, a very good afternoon to you. Bye-bye.